Welcome back, everybody. I am having a lot of fun with pre-chat with Eddie Liu. You know Eddie as Henry Yan from Kung Fu on CW. If you have not watched Kung Fu on CW, click right below this video and go watch it. Welcome to the program, Eddie Liu.
Thanks for having me, Alan.
Dude, it's so great. I'm really enjoying the show. It's one of those shows. Again, we'll talk about martial arts in a second. All of my audience knows I can't shut up about martial arts, but for me, as soon as I saw that there's a kung fu show, and one of my favorite all-time shows, Warrior, we don't have anything to watch because we're waiting, and finally they got approved for season 3. Yes.
Yep.
And kung fu is there. Like, yes, we're watching kung fu. And then you get into it, and then it's a little bit like, okay, do I want to stay? And then you start getting into really interesting topics that are outside of kung fu that deal with LGBTQ issues, that deal with violence against Asians. If anybody is watching this and they want to do harm to Asians, fuck you, stop watching. Seriously.
Simple.
Yeah, come on, man. So you got me on that. You got me on the BLM issue. Kind of, you're not shying away from dealing with issues, and that's where kind of the show really started getting me. And then, the last episode, if you haven't, by the way, spoilers ahead, right? So just be warned. And then the last episode, boom. Well, you may be the rightful owner to the sword anyway. What? Okay.
Yeah.
This is good. Let's see where this is going, and then we'll see if Henry is getting something else. Any more surprises on that side? So like the show keeps getting me involved more from different angles than I expected it, and that's one of the reasons I'm really enjoying it. What was it like, getting to my long-winded question? What was it like actually being a part of the process? How much of the kind of plot and the turns you knew in advance versus as an actor you may not find out until the latest script that you're getting in the morning right before a shoot?
There's so much that we found out in real time where we'd all get the scripts together. So the reveal of her lineage and things like that was so much fun to find out together. Like, we didn't know those things. Most of us didn't know those things. I think Kang knew early on.
Okay.
We each, because so many of these characters have their own individual secrets, we each had individual meetings with our showrunners, Christina and Bob, and they were very open about, like, hey, do you want to know your own backstory? And for a lot of us, we said, yes, we do want to know what secrets we're hiding, because this way we can live with it longer. And then when it comes time to perform it, it makes sense for the execution of the scenes. And I guess there were some secrets that we probably could have, if we wanted to know about, say, Olivia's secret or Kang's secret, or rather Nikki and Mei Li. Like, that's probably something that we could have asked, but like, we wanted in on the fun of not knowing and finding out, just like the audience. Thankfully, we don't get the scripts last minute. That does happen a lot in television. There are shows that you'll get it, like you said, like the morning of, and that's something that actors have to contend with. And it's such a hard thing to be like, wait, you just learned the words and now you have to act it? Like, oh my God. So thankfully, that's not our situation. Thankfully, we got our stuff in advance, for sure. And we have time to sit and breathe with it. So between finding out that information and then the turnaround to putting it on camera, like, there is some space. Like the lineage, didn't know that, but also kind of like looking at it like, oh wow, that actually makes a ton of sense. Like, I think we have some fans who are very smart. Like, they got some great theories that I've seen floating around on the internet. One commenter was like, hey, as soon as she saw the scar in her hand, she kind of knew that was like, I think she's destined to wield the sword, or it's there is a connection, that there's more than meets the eye there. It's not just an arbitrary thing that burned her. I knew about Henry's backstory early on. I was able to ask some questions, because it also kind of has to do with like basic questions, like my car. Where did I get this car from? Why do I? Because Henry doesn't really need one. He lives in Chinatown. the university that he works and teaches at is all right there. Like, so, simple questions like that, like that are just kind of useful to know.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's so much fun to find out. I would again, I would want to know my backstory. I do not want to know anybody else's
No,
because
where's the
I
fun in that?
want, huh?
Where's the fun in that?
Exactly. Yeah, I want to be there. I want to discover it as it's happening in the scene. I want to be reacting, naturally to the circumstances. I don't want to have more things that I have to. It's like, okay, act surprised. There are too many things going on anyway with the lighting and the marks and all that stuff that I have to pay attention to.
All the technical stuff. That was, I always knew that was always going to be a dance that you had to figure out between the actor, the camera, and everything else. But that sometimes you can't help, like you're in the middle of a really intense scene and there's that bulb right there hanging over your scene partner's eye. It's all that fun, unsexy stuff that like I always kind of laugh whenever I see a TV show being made in a TV show, like whether it's like Entourage or Bowfinger or like it. Nothing makes the industry less attractive to me than seeing a show or a movie get made on a TV show or a movie because it looks ridiculous. You're like you sometimes because I love my job, but sometimes you take a step back, and Olivia and I will say this to each other. We're like, acting is weird.
Very.
Like, and we're not talking theater where it's a very organic, like curtain to curtain. You have this living, breathing experience on the stage and you share with the audience and then it's over. It's like on camera acting is a very weird, odd process.
And you have
it's a lot of sausage making.
Yeah, and it's shot out of sequence, and you have to understand all of the different types of coverages that you're shooting. And is this a wide? Is this a medium? Are we doing a close up? Is this a real close up where like where am I looking? If it's a real close up, like how much off camera do I be? Like all of that stuff.
Sometimes I can't even look at my scene partner. Sometimes Olivia's head is like we're being eclipsed by the camera because she's standing like behind the camera op. All
It's fun.
It's really cool to learn and see how that's done and like what is done on set and does not often reflect what is seen on in the final product, and like that transition is it is quite magical sometimes. You do get a sense of that in spite of how odd and technical everything can be sometimes.
But it's cool, and I'm glad you guys were in the bubble. It's a weird thing to say, and 2 years ago, neither of us would have known what we're talking about. But you guys really kind of started shooting. You were shooting in Vancouver, which is cool. I love Canada. And then because kind of everything shut down around you, you got to really be close. I know, you and Olivia were friends already. I know you and Shannon were friends already, but I think that brought you closer. And I had the same thing with the family, as their family from Warrior. They were just away in South Africa shooting, so they became a family because they were just on their own. I think you guys have a little bit of that happening too.
Exactly. As terrible as the pandemic has been for so many people in so many ways, there is still some good that came of it. And in our case, it brought us closer. Like we got to do family potlucks and
that's cool.
And not have to carry the burden of the loneliness and the enormity of what we're working on together. Like that wasn't a burden that we needed to carry on our own. And thank goodness we were able to lean on each other, all of us, in that way, because it's for a lot of us this is a very new thing. Like for a lot of us this is our first series. Some of us have been around the block, like Ty and Kang and Gavin. He's worked very successfully on other stuff, and some of us have had guest stars and co-stars on other jobs, but this is, for a lot of us, this is our first series, and with that comes so much opportunity and so much responsibility and baggage in a lot of ways that that they don't teach you in acting school. When you come out to a place like LA or when you move to New York, you study acting, you study how to be a good theater actor, and you learn to repeat and you learn sense memory and stuff, but nobody teaches you all the weird shit that comes with being a television actor.
It bothers me a lot. it bothers me a lot. You don't know how many actors I talk to, and this is what, we're getting close to 200 actor interviews. And you have actors who we've seen everywhere, and these poor boys and girls get out of the incredibly expensive and well-known New York acting schools, and they don't know how to get to a mark. And they get on their first show and they're told, hey, you stand here. And she basically, one of the actresses says, what's a mark? And they laughed it off. Oh, you're funny. That's so cute. And she's like, okay, I'm gonna pretend like I know what I'm talking about, but what the hell is a mark? Like,
Yeah.
really? You spend so much time in these institutions and they can't tell you how to get headshots, how to get an agent or a manager, because a showcase is not enough. There's a whole world out there. Like, what are you doing if you're not helping people actually get a job and be successful at it? What's the point?
Yeah. I know that was a concern that we talked about. It was a topic of conversation that came up in our school, and like thankfully in my last semester at my acting school, I went to the Esper Studio in New York. Mm-hmm. And if you're in the 2-year program, once you're in the second year, you can start taking auditioning technique classes. There's a monologue class that you can take where you can work on that. And I've literally never auditioned with a monologue. I think only once in LA. But they always say, hey, keep 2 in your back pocket.
Usually the monologue is to the agent audition. That's really all I have ever done it for. I've not done it for anything else.
Right. And so we started getting the beginning tools of how to even broach the new level of like, okay, you leave the safe space that is acting studio where you can feel and touch yourself and cry on each other, and it's great, and you need that. Then you have to do a hard transition out of that neighborhood. You have to leave.
Yeah.
Or at least find the next level of community that offers you that same level of safe space to experiment and play and try and fail and fuck up. But like, you got to learn how to audition. So like, you're talking about that actress who didn't know what a mark was.
Yeah.
She's lucky she even got on set. Like, there are actors who don't know what it is to audition for a high caliber like TV gig, a television gig. That's in spite of all their training, they don't. To even be able to walk in a room and execute a decent audition where the world didn't fall apart around you, that's something that a lot of people have yet to achieve. And once they achieve that, like, congratulations. Like, honestly, like, in all earnestness, like, once you get to that point and you can walk out without feeling like you didn't tank your career, like, fucking good job. Like, hang on to that and build off of that.
Yeah. It's what a lot of people don't know that are outside of the industry is that, you hear actors get a lot of rejection. It's not the rejection. It's not hearing anything, because that's mostly what you're getting. You're just not hearing anything. You drive for an hour and a half to the audition, like I do in Chicago. You sit there for another half an hour, maybe longer. Then you get your 2 minutes, and then they say thank you, and you leave, and you drive an hour and a half back thinking, fuck, I could have done better. And then you hear nothing. That's what acting is like most of the time.
And then you have some like cousin or aunt or like friend who's like, oh yeah, so did you hear back? No, I didn't hear. You're not supposed to.
I know. How did it go? I don't want to think about it.
I don't fucking know. It came and it went. I don't know. I left. And they didn't offer me a check. They didn't, it's again, what a weird industry. What a weird business.
There's no hug at the end of it. It's like, oh, Eddie.
There's no high five.
You booked it. That's it. I'm calling the producer. You got the job. I'm going to tell everybody else that's waiting to audition. They can go home because you got it. No, doesn't work.
Not even like a, hey, Alan, that was really great. Let me give you 3 things to work on.
Yeah.
So that you could take this with you and build off this. There's no time. And I know somebody is going to listen to this and be like, wow, these casting people, like, oh, no hearts and they're soulless and they don't give you any feedback. How could they not do that? But when you work if you were to work in casting, you'll see how pressed for time. It's like the cycle that we as actors go through. Casting is going through that. Producers are going through that. Writers have their own shitstorm to deal with, especially if they're already in the room in production for a show that's already on the air. And they have to turn into new pages by tonight for network and studio approval and the other head producer, the other head EP who hasn't put his eyes on it yet. Like, it's a rat race for everybody constantly. And we make it so much about us all the time. Like little old me didn't hear back, didn't get feedback on that audition, and it's like I empathize. I've gone through that plenty in my career, but like there's just no time. It's the same thing with like these acting schools not being able to equip every single one of their actors with knowing how to pursue the business of acting or how to be a professional actor after the school or after the program ends. There's not enough time. Like there are so many people who I've talked to who I'm like, bless their hearts. Like I love that they're ready to commit to the pursuit of the
Yeah.
career.
Yeah.
But having been in, say, class or another scenario with them, I also kind of know like, oh, maybe you're not ready yet either. Like everybody's on their own timeline. Like I know that there were a lot of things that I wasn't ready for, and I was really heartbroken about missed opportunities and jobs that I got rejected from. But it was also like, was I really getting rejected? Like I just wasn't ready. It wasn't mine. It was somebody else's turn. Like that, all these jobs that I didn't get, I bemoaned it, and I was, and I mourned the loss of some of these jobs. But the person who got the thing that I auditioned for, it belonged to them,
Yeah.
and there's a reason for that.
Okay, I would be a terrible interviewer if I didn't ask you about some of the jobs that you lost and that you were, mourning. So, can you
Yeah,
share any of them?
there was one pilot. There was a couple of Marvel things that I didn't tell you that I auditioned for, but like because
Right.
we're not supposed to. So I didn't tell you that I did it. But
Got
there were
it.
some things there were some things that I really wanted and that I had the opportunity to read for, and like just kind of being like, woe is me, what was I missing,
Yeah.
and then comparing myself to the person who I eventually saw on screen who got it and being like, what am I? And then a lot of, and not just that, but like in general, a lot of jobs where I did eventually see it and being like, whoa, I'm nothing like that guy.
Mhm.
You could not have taught me how to be like that because he is that and I am this,
Yep.
and they wanted that. So again, it's not me being rejected; it's him getting accepted.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was one pilot a couple of years ago that I loved. It was like this. He was a bit of a wise ass, really smart. You kind of didn't know whether you could trust him or not, and he was. It was in this fictional world where the United States had fractured into two separate countries, and they had split in the middle of the Midwest. And so you
Okay.
had these people running back and forth, and looking back on it now would have been a little too hyper real, but it was like one country was a little more conservative, the other country was more liberal. Each had their own problems.
Yeah.
But the character that I was reading for, I loved him because you didn't know if he was a good guy or a bad guy. He clearly had his own self-serving interests, but he wanted to help the main character because the main character had like wanted to see his daughter, but his daughter lives in the other country.
Yeah.
So and I read for that like a couple of times, but as the process went on, I came to learn that it really wasn't about me. There were so many notes coming from left and right from the streaming platform that was going to do it, and then the writer I think really liked me, but like he's getting all these notes from other people. So that was a good learning experience of like, hey, dude, it's not just about you, the actor. There's so many wheels turning in the
And
business.
most of the time it's not. But
Yeah,
as someone, I know you've done a lot of commercial work.
yeah,
That's the other part that I wanted to touch upon, and then for those of you who are watching, for us to talk about Kung Fu Show, we'll get there just right after this. But in terms of your commercial work, what I find the most hilarious is that for commercial work, they're putting you through such a ringer for a lot of roles that don't require any acting or any speaking, and you're going through so much acting crap that they're having you memorize like 5 pages of lines. And I'm
yeah.
for what?
I
You're
know.
just
And then
being yourself. That's all you're
my
doing.
I I take it as what do you call it? A rite of passage that
Yeah.
I, like many LA actors, have. I before the pandemic, I was working in a gym in West Hollywood, and I can't tell you how many countless times, numerous times, I can't keep track of that. I would get an appointment um on the West Side, like in Santa Monica, at like 2 or 3 p.m. And I had a client to train at like 4 or 5 p.m. So I have to
Yeah.
head there just before rush hour. I could see the traffic building up coming back east as I'm driving west. and then I do the appointment, and sometimes the waiting room is a crapshoot. Like it's like over an hour, before you get in there. Now, not only am I kind of shaking off the did I royally screw up or did I nail it, but like you kind of can't even. That's even literally impossible to quantify for yourself. I went in and they'll be like, tell us your favorite fall activity. I like football. I like watching football. My name is Eddie Liu. Thanks so much for bringing me in. And then you leave. That was the audition, because it's going to be some MOS thing where they didn't need you to say any lines. They just need you to act like a normal person, and you needed some nameless, faceless entity who is the client who liked your look. That's kind of, and then a bunch of other business decisions that had nothing to do with you. And now I'm driving back in traffic in rush hour on the 405 or the 10 coming back. People in LA will understand this. And then I have to go back to WeHo to train and be like, sometimes I text my client like, hey, I'm coming back from an audition and I might be 5 minutes late. And that was my life for like years. And again, that's like the rat race of it all. And that happens a lot. And not just commercials, but like a lot of TV auditions are like that too.
Yeah, the co-stars.
But now in the post-pandemic, now we can do the Zoom thing.
Right behind us here's the sausage and how it's made. You see that? That's gorgeous. That's my screen. So
everybody watching, if you are an aspiring actor and you're getting into it now, like the sooner you can put that shit up and get what Alan has going on, the better. Like honestly, that's
there's not a lot to do, seriously, right? So there's my room. Here's one light, there's the camera, here's the other light, and here is your screen. This whole setup cost probably about $150.
Great. You got the lights.
The camera is more expensive, but yeah.
Yeah, and the magic that you can create within that space under that budget, like if your talent and your skills and your everything else are there, like you can, and you have, say, maybe you need like good reps or whatever, you can fucking compete if some of these technicals, if you have the base minimum of this in order.
Pretty much, yeah. It doesn't take a lot. You just need to do it and continue doing it. And
what intimidates the crap out of me? Have you seen breakdowns or auditions from Atlanta?
Yeah, I've done. I've done a bunch.
You audition, you put yourself on tape for Atlanta. Every now and again, I'll see it. Or even if it's not for me, I'm helping like my girlfriend or I'm helping a friend tape for something that shoots in Atlanta. And what surprises me and always kind of throws me off is seeing how many self-tape instructions there are.
Yeah.
Like must be medium frame, must be good, well lit, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like getting nervous. I was like, oh my God, like, am I going to screw this up if I had to tape this? I'm like, wait, I fucking know how to do this. Why am I getting nervous? It's because there's so many people in those markets who don't know these basic rules and don't know how to make a good tape.
Yep.
And I'm getting self-conscious as if I'm going to be a bad steward, or as if I'm going to get a bad grade on it. And like, no, it's for the people who don't quite know.
And the casting directors do not agree on what background you should have. The only thing that they agree on is make sure there's enough light, make sure people can hear you and see you properly, and make sure the background is not busy. Other than that, it really doesn't matter. Because I've interviewed casting directors on this show, and I specifically asked them what color background. None of them gave the same answer. Everybody wants something else. So just keep it clean. Don't worry about it. You're fine.
I think, okay, for the listeners, if you don't give a shit about Kung Fu or anything else that we have to say, here's what I've whittled down over the past X amount of years that I've been doing this. It's never really about the one thing. It's more like you hear all these rules these parameters that got passed along to you over time because so many people were screwing these things up that these things had to kind of come up. If you do anything well enough, if the overall composition of your audition product or anything like that is good enough, the little things don't really matter. Like the color of your background, if your lighting is just a shade too dark for one particular person's taste. Like if you are the character and you bring those words to life, and also they can trust that you are gonna be a professional on set, and they can trust you to be working on that set for that week on that episode with opposite the leads of the show and not be some crazy Holly weirdo. That's already so much that can put you in honest contention.
Yeah.
But we get so precious, we get hung up on, oh my God, the light switches and thing. I have to tell my friends all the time, like, that's not the reason you didn't get the job.
Right.
It
Absolutely
has,
not.
it's everything else. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not your reader who's being a little too loud, right? It's not none of those things.
What are you going to do when you get in the room and your reader is too soft or not giving you the moments that you rehearsed with your scene partner? You know what I mean? And now we don't have that. Now we have, I mean, now I used to think that if you had a reader that was off camera and you had like the phone that was just off to the side, like I used to think that that was terrible, and I never at all cost wanted to do that. But that is the going practice now, and that's normal, and that's okay because everyone gets it because pandemic.
Yeah. I'm lucky. My daughter is my reader. My daughter, she's done acting as well. So it's more of, hey, honey, come in here. I'm gonna boss you around. Make sure that you record things properly. That's it. So I'm lucky. Okay, Kung Fu. Thank you, those of you who are sticking around, who were listening to all the acting stuff that we just wanted to talk about because we're actors. So in terms of the show, the Kung Fu obviously has martial arts in it, and I like that you are starting to include more and more martial arts people in the show, in addition to the cast. Gary Daniels was just on. By the way, for me, knowing Gary Daniels, I don't know him personally, but watching Gary Daniels for 20 years, knowing this is the guy with tremendous martial art pedigree that continues, hitting a 200-pound or 400-pound steel bearings on a daily basis because that's how you practice. When he was fighting Nikki, I'm like, okay, suspend disbelief, suspend disbelief. So, but Gary Daniels was on.
That's as real as a martial artist I've ever seen. Like a pure, true martial artist, a man who lives and breathes it and loves to train every day. He doesn't do it because he's an actor who has to learn it on the side. Like, he lives and breathes it.
It's his stuff, and that's why I'm like, there are martial artists and there are enthusiasts. I'm an enthusiast. I've been that my whole life. Yes, I know how to do some things, but I am not a martial artist. Gary Daniels is a martial artist. That's
artist.
Yeah.
Georges St. Pierre. He is a martial artist.
Yeah.
Not just a fighter.
He's awesome. Did he unretire again? I don't know if I
think so. Okay. I think so. I kind of can't keep track. It's been keeping track of sports for me has definitely I've fallen out of that as I got older,
and I love that they brought him.
My life focus became paying bills, and watching sports kind of fell by the wayside.
And they brought him back. I love how he was in the
Falcon Winter Soldier.
Yeah, they brought him back.
That was great.
Wait a second, they killed him. I remember before. Didn't he get killed? I think he got killed.
He didn't get killed. He escaped. Okay. Yeah.
All right. I just remember that fight with him and Cap. So, but anyway, he's good. Your martial arts background, because we see you doing Tai Chi and then we see you actually doing Kung Fu. What is your background? What did you practice? Because the first fight where we kind of saw you and you just threw a block, I'm like, okay, and he's for real. He knows what he's doing. This is not just a guy who they taught some choreography to. What is your martial arts background?
Well, they did have to teach me the choreography too. It was a lot of micro tuning and a lot of adjusting along the way and last minute choreo changes. And by changes, I mean Brett Chan was our stunt coordinator on that, and he's like, okay, instead of 3 chain punches, I need you to throw 5 or 6 now. Yeah, Brett Chan from Warrior.
Brett is on Kung Fu. I didn't even know that.
Yeah. Brett was with us for the first almost halfway through the season, but then he got a huge opportunity to go second unit direct on a big thing, which I don't know if I'm allowed to say here. It's not a caution. I will abstain from saying the name, but it's a huge freaking thing that he got to the second unit direct on, and our showrunners were like, Brett, you got to go. You got to take that. Good for you, man. Congratulations. And, we miss him, but I'm happy for him. Yeah, and then the other coordinators on Kung Fu already stepped in seamlessly and took on the rest of the season. And when I say small adjustment, Brett was just like, no, instead of 3, I need you to throw like 5 or 6 chain punches. And for me,
Yeah.
in my mind, I was like, oh shit, like what does that look like? I don't know. My background, I think I was taking Chinese lessons in an after school program years ago, and I was like 6 or something like that. And they had Kung Fu as like a supplementary thing you could do for like once a week. So it was very, very light Kung Fu training. I didn't learn all that much, but I didn't really start the serious martial arts training until my brother and I started Kempo karate when I was 9. And I did that for like 5-ish years, I think, something like that, 4 or 5-ish years. Like I got to 3rd degree brown belt in that. And then when I was 13, my family and I happened upon, we just kind of stumbled. We watched a documentary on like Discovery Channel or something like that, and they were covering the Shaolin Temple overseas headquarters in Flushing, Queens. The head instructor, or the head guy, was how do we pronounce his name? In like Americanized Chinese, like Shi Gulin, or we say Guolin Sifu. He, at the time, he was next in line to be the next head abbot of the temple in China. Not anymore, but like, but he. So then my brother and I went there for. Even my sister, we went there for like 3 years. Throughout high school, like I didn't have a social life. It was just like every weekend, Saturday, Sunday, all day. My mom, thank goodness for her. My parents were like, "Hey, it's far away. This is in Queens." We were living in Long Island, so it was a 45-minute drive in to take these classes. And then we got on the performance team, and we were just going all around Queens. And I remember performing in all kinds of. We would take performance gigs anywhere. Like it was like I remember there was like a rainy, wet pavement parking lot underneath a drippy, dirty garage, like under a bridge in a hospital parking lot. We took that gig once. We performed in Shea Stadium. We did one for Lincoln Center once. And this was all like throughout high. So I didn't have a social life at all. Like I had friends, but I didn't like hardly ever like went out. So that was one way to keep us out of trouble, is just keep us really busy. And then years later, my sister got into it a little bit. She dabbled in it as well. But so my parents were like, listen, it's really far, but if you want to commit to this, like, but you might have to give up the going to Kempo, because we can't do both. And
they're just kind of,
it can get very pricey. And we felt we were ready to connect more to our like Chinese roots. And we felt it was the right time to move on. And even though I didn't get my black belt at that point, I kind of didn't really care about the belt anymore. And I knew that this was the right move for us. And I'm glad I went, and here's the thing, I was honestly never really good at it. I didn't live the life. I didn't have the mentality of a true martial artist. I was very much more of a hobbyist. But when it came time to join the show on Kung Fu, like it's not so much I was like good, but like I was familiarized. So I've seen monks break bricks over their heads. I've seen all kinds of beautiful, like tiger style, snake style, praying mantis. I've seen, Xiao Hongchuan. Like I've seen, I know what it looks like. I know what Shaolin staff looks like, So that was very helpful in learning the choreo. And so when we did our little Kung Fu camp at the beginning of the pilot, and then when we did the restart, when we came back in the fall in the midst of the pandemic, again, we had a little miniature Kung Fu boot camp. And I think the coordinators were kind of relieved to know, like, oh, wait, okay, Eddie is familiar, like we don't have to worry about him. And I was I got to do quite a bit of my own fighting, thankfully. And then there was quite a few things that my double Ken Do, who's phenomenal, there's some things that he had to do, and whether it be for time or for danger, Ken will fill in on those.
And I didn't hear Tai Chi in that repertoire, but you had to.
Tai Chi I had to learn. So my background is mostly the Kempo, the Shaolin Kung Fu. I dabbled in a couple of weapons at the time, so I could do flowers with any kind of two-handed weapon, whether it be sticks or broadswords or tiger hooks. Like it's the same movement. Like for performance, like if you can get down the basic sort of rotation like this way, and then the reverse, and then the different kinds of whatever, and if you can do that with a short stick, you can carry that over to any kind of blade weapon or a longer, like it translates. The translation ability is very high, a very high percentage. Yeah, so that's like the kind of the basis you need for the listeners out there. And then I had a grappling background. A lot of throughout middle school and high school, I wrestled, and then like I dabbled. I did club wrestling in college, and then after college, I got into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai. So very much like real world practical, like you like, oh, I could try to throw a kick at you, but if I were you could throw a kick at me, but if I were to just hug you and take you to the ground, your kicks count for nothing. And that's the percentage of most fights. That's in real life. That's how it goes down, which is why in mixed martial arts and the UFC, that's why you see, for those who don't know what the hell you were watching, that's why you see so many these guys laying on top of each other, because that's how you neutralize a striking attack. So I spent a lot of time in post college in my 20s, spending more time with like contact, dabbling in that kind of stuff. And then so when it came time to do Kung Fu, it really felt amazing because I got to reconnect with my roots, and I felt like I was connecting with my culture, my Kung Fu background, and it all just felt good inside.
So did they tell you like, okay, Henry is teaching the Yan style of Tai Chi in the center, because we saw a video of Gary Daniels doing the Chen style, which he just kind of, they did just a little part before they cut away in the actual scene. But did they tell you, okay, this is Yan, this is what?
No, they didn't actually. They gave me a quick crash course in Tai Chi. They gave me some basic. So this is the thing that I had to let go of. I had to let go of being like, oh my God, I have to learn the perfect original form as it is taught in schools. And then they were kind of like, nah, here's really what it is. It's like, you take pieces of it, you take the flourish of it, and then you just kind of make it your own. And like, we don't have to go strictly gospel in terms of in terms of anybody's particular Kung Fu curriculum. Like we're not doing that. There's a lot of that. You see a lot of that in television adaptation of any kind of style of or martial arts curriculum. We're borrowing little bits and putting it together. And there's a fun to that. There's a liberty to that. There's a freedom to that. But for the purists, though, you'll recognize some things. Is it exactly what you would have learned with your thing in that place that you went to? Maybe not, but it's reminiscent of that. And we're communicating the idea and the culture of it rather than the textbook routine of it.
No, that's the most important. Again, Bruce was talking about that all the time. It's pick things that are yours and continue evolving. Don't be rigid, be fluid.
Exactly.
So very, very cool. And then Olivia and you have been friends. So then you got, were there any, I'm assuming, right, in any show, you go through the process of auditioning and then you get to chemistry reads and all the other stuff. Did they have you and Olivia do a chemistry read, or they already knew that you knew each other and that kind of played in your favor?
I don't think they knew that we knew each other.
Okay.
It all just worked out. Like a lot of things a lot of recurring things about the making of Kung Fu and the way that we came together was a lot of things just worked out magically. And is it Kismet? Is that the word? Yeah, like happy accident, a lot of serendipity, a lot of the universe aligning, a lot of the stars aligning, a lot of that was a recurring thing for us. And then a lot of uphill battles and a lot of obstacles along the way, of course, but many things that needed to align did align. And as I've gotten older, I used to hate hearing people tell me, "Hey, don't worry, it's all going to work out. Just trust that it's all going to work out." I used to hate that because I'd be afraid to be wrong, or like it's almost like I was wanting to be right. In my pessimism or my realisticness about the way something's going to go, especially when it comes to being an actor auditioning for something and wondering if you're going to get it or not. Like all that stuff I think coincides, but we didn't do, it's kind of surprisingly, we didn't do any chemistry reads. But Olivia and I were in contact with each other in the auditioning process. She at the time was in Atlanta just shooting Legacies, and she tapes for it while she's in Atlanta, and then she doesn't find out that she's going to screen test. Or she did find out she was going to screen test while she was still there. She has to fly back home and then go through that whole process herself. I was going through it like almost maybe a week or ahead of her in the schedule. I think they were still looking for the Nickies separately. Like, so every character kind of is almost on their own timeline, depending on how much progress they're making in finding all the choices. Because eventually they have to bring as many people as they can, depending on what round you're in, to screen test at Network and Studio. So they had found a bunch of Nickies. They tested them. They knew they wanted to keep looking, and Olivia was still in Atlanta at the time. And then it came time for her to come back here and test, and then that's how it worked out. But yeah, no, we were texting each other like, how did it go in there? What was it like? Who did you see? How was the room? You know, and for me at this point, I'd gotten very cozy testing at Warner Brothers because I had tested for them before, the year before on other stuff. So the whole like wanting to throw up before you go in the room, that feeling was gone.
Okay, that's good.
Because I've been through that. That like I'm like, okay, this built my auditioning muscles tenfold.
Yeah, because you're walking into those rooms and you're like, yeah, I know who's been here and I know who works here and I know what they produce here. Yeah, you can. Yeah, it's easier said than done that you can't think about any of that because we do.
Exactly, and thankfully everybody, especially Warner Brothers, like it's always a warm. Anybody who ever gets the opportunity to test with them, it's a warm environment, you know. There's Peter Roth and Tim. Oh my God, I forgot his name. But they're the heads of television over there and television casting, and they are suits, so to speak. But they're very supportive and like everybody's rooting for you. You know, that's the thing about auditioning is like it's not you versus them. You know.
No.
It's that's not the correct alignment of. It's not you got to tweak your mentality there on what that process is.
Yeah,
it's coming in and it's you, the actor, coming in and sharing your take on the character and bringing it alive for them to enjoy. And the more that you get to present and perform and enjoy that, revel in that, the better it is for everybody. Actually,
it is. It just makes things easier. And I think a lot of the actors, you start booking once you realize that you're not there to impress them. You're there to give your take on the character. And if they see you as the character in those circumstances, then maybe it's going to work. Otherwise, don't worry about it, because if you did a good job, they may call you for something else. So.
Exactly, and they'll remember you. They will remember the good actors. That doesn't mean that you are promised an opportunity right around the corner, but like they love it when an actor comes in, is a pro, knocks it out of the park, is the part. And even if it doesn't work out, like they fucking love that. I had a teacher of mine, Sarah Mornell, gave me some great advice that I carried with me into these testing rooms. I did 3 studio tests back to back, all in the span of like 5-6 weeks in 2019. And that's sort of what mentally prepared me for 2020 when I auditioned for Kung Fu. Because for me, auditioning and testing for Kung Fu, I think a part of it was I was already very much like the part in a lot of ways. Like I'm already like way too much like Henry, actually. It's kind of funny. But going into the room again, it's a recurring, like everybody knows. I know. I know. But going into that room, I was so mentally prepared. Like I built my auditioning muscles, like I said. And what Sarah teaches is, especially when you're testing, because you're in that room full of suits, what we were talking about before is that these people got to know that they can trust that you can handle the budget of X amount of millions of dollars per episode on your back, that you're not going to come in and crumble at the plate. Like this is the big leagues. This is the Olympics. You know what I mean? So what she teaches is you come in, yes, all that stuff about being the character and being grounded and making truthful, real choices and bringing the character to life and lifting the words off the page. All that aside, what the screen test is you are basically a late night talk show guest. You're bringing the best version of yourself. If you make them laugh somewhere along the way, great, but they want to know that they like you and that they can trust you, and that this is a professional who can also very much do the job. Because especially when it comes time for like doing the press tours and all that stuff, and you gotta do interviews, and it's like we romanticize the artist, you know, the tormented, dark, brooding artist. But when it comes time to book a job or whatever, that's not always the exact winning recipe. As far as that's not for everybody, not in all contexts. Like that's not the lead foot that works for me.
Mhm.
You know,
I'm
I
with
think I learned early on that I'm really good in the room because I know that I get along with people.
you.
It's not that you have to small talk or any kind of thing like that. It's just, are people gonna like you enough and trust you to do the job? That's a huge part of it.
It's the energy. People feel it. You don't have to say anything. It's once you walk into the room, everybody gets a feeling, and that's really what it's about. And you know,
Yeah, it's
you're
palpable.
likable. Yeah, you're a likable guy. You're a serious guy, and you're a fun guy. So when you're walking in, they're feeling that. And if you
Yeah,
can deliver, then everything else is bonus.
yeah.
Um, I wanted to ask you because I asked Gavin that same thing. The whole, Nikki, you have 6 smiles. I'm like, thank you for that meta reference to Win a Date with Ted Hamilton.
With
Uh,
Ted Hamilton.
yeah, I immediately that's the first thing that came to mind. But I was paying
Which
attention
smile
because
do I have now? What?
yeah,
You said
exactly.
I have 6 miles, wasn't
Yeah. Well, I had better writers. Yeah.
it?
Um, which so when I was paying attention, like the first 2 or 3 episodes of watching Nikki, because I haven't of watching Olivia, because I haven't seen her before, and I'm watching her, I'm like, her smile, not always, but her smile is so familiar to me. I know this smile. Where do I know it from? And then I figured it out. Her one of her 6 smiles is Zoe Saldana's smile.
Zoe Saldana.
Yeah,
Oh, okay. I want to go back and look. This is interesting. Zoe
look it
Saldana,
up.
I have a very minor connection, which is that my cousin went to high school with her in Queens. That's my connection to Zoe Saldana.
Yeah, I haven't had her on the show. Zoe, if you're watching, please come on down. Same thing to Olivia. By the way, I think I invited Olivia, so come on down so we can talk about your
Yeah,
smile.
come on
And
down. It's a good time. Yeah,
um,
this is interesting observation. Okay, I'm gonna dig into this further.
so take a look because it's one of my superpowers. I know who looks like who. It's that thing that I've noticed about myself, but I
Yeah,
know for sure that that is that smile is a match. So I want to know if anybody else has noticed that or not. So I
you're
told
the
Gavin.
first.
Okay, all right, good.
Yep,
When you chat with Olivia, please tell her to look up Zoe and see if she sees the smile.
I will. I will.
Okay. Very cool. As we wrap up, because I know you're busy and you and I could talk for another hour easily about all sorts of stuff.
Yeah,
What,
I'm very long-winded, as you can tell. So if there are any rapid fire things that I can address, I'd be happy to as well.
dude, I'm long-winded. People constantly tell me to shut up and it's all about the guest and not me, which I agree with and I disagree. But anyway, so in terms of season 2, by the way, congratulations.
Thank you.
I don't want to ask you about the stuff that's coming up because, like I told you, as an actor, I don't want to know. I want to
Right,
see, I want to find out
right.
myself. I have some ideas of where it's going, but what would you like for Henry to do, whether it's towards the end of this or whether it's in season 2? Like, what is the arc that you see for Henry?
Yeah, kind of what I want to see more of what he's already been doing, which is like being maximizing his potential in being at Nikki's side and being supportive, whether that is on the sidelines and not throwing punches or getting in the thick of it, which I will tease right now that there will be more to come of
Yeah.
that. Things will get more intense and we're gonna find out new revelations. The treasure hunt is gonna grow. Um, what I love about Henry and about playing him is that I get to explore those things. I get to be in the thick of the hunt, and when things get hot, as far as like throwing fisticuffs, like Henry can take care of himself too. And so I just want to keep seeing more of that. I'd love to explore Henry's background a little bit more. Maybe the crowds that he used to roll with, his friends from back in the day. There's a whole underbelly that you can there's a wealth of opportunity there to explore with where these people come from. And Henry is a man of San Francisco and the Bay and Chinatown, and yeah, that's something for me that I love seeing, and I want to keep seeing them. I have so much fun. Like Henry's a fun guy, and where there are moments where fun isn't really written, like I can't help myself but inject that in there.
Yeah, and the way that things are going, I mean, obviously we know that Nikki's going to fight Jalan. That's their trajectory, and they
Maybe.
just set up maybe not, and they just set up Henry's trajectory. So Henry's supposed to be fighting Ludi Lin. They just did that. So whether it's going to happen or not, but that's the way that I'm kind of seeing. Like, okay, I would like to see that fight. That's an interesting fight
Strong
between.
theory. That's a strong theory. I will not. This is me, not me answering. That's me merely observing. I like where
Yeah.
your head's at.
Yeah, that's kind of where I saw it, because I'm a fan of Ludi Lin as well. I was
Well,
surprised
yeah.
to see him. Like, wait,
He wasn't
that's
he great in Mortal Kombat? Like he was like the character come to life. Like
they
that
didn't
shit.
let him
Just
do much.
I know.
It,
I know. He could. I know. Hey, I'm with you on that. But I will say, as far as the casting and his
yeah,
performance of it, like
it was great.
he was spot on.
He was great. And then last thing, and this is kind of the acting with the kung fu with other stuff coming in, because it's just interesting to me, because you and Olivia know each other, and because you've been friends, and now you're playing love interest. By the way, mad respect to Henry saying, "Hey, let's pause. You may have feelings to somebody else." I respect that. But anyway, in terms of you and Olivia, because you know each other, is it
Mhm.
how, like, there has to be obviously that separation, and as actors we do segment really well, but is it weird because you know somebody and you're friends and now you have to be love interest? Does it feel
Yeah.
weird, or is
Yeah,
it
it's fucking weird.
yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
No, we laugh and we've watched some episodes together, and there was that, what was it, episode 4 where they kissed for the first time. She was hiding behind a bush plant inside the living room when we watched that scene together. I was curled up in the ball. She's literally like hiding behind because she's so awkward about it. I'm laughing. I'm cringing at. I'm kind of like, well, I've gotten better at watching myself do that stuff on camera. Like that doesn't really phase me all that much because I can separate it on a professional level. But I'm like laughing at her. So like her reaction to this shit is just, it's a gas. It's funny for us to laugh at but that's how we were both very jokey people.
Yeah.
He is probably the most chaotic person on set to be around, and but
Oh my God.
she's got such a great sense of. I think, and that's something that I don't know if the audience picks up on in terms of like Olivia's really funny. I don't know if you because Nikki is such a serious, earnest character, and she's like the hero, and she has to be a hero so much. But Olivia's hilarious. So we just laugh through it, and um, it's great. Like it's kind of like, as awkward as it is to do that stuff with your friends. Um, it's kind of like we're having a good time doing it.
I did not know that until I went on your Instagram, and then I saw a bunch of stuff that the behind the scenes. I'm like, oh my God, Olivia is a riot.
She's an
Uh,
absolute riot. People don't. I don't know if you know that from watching Kung Fu, but yeah,
No. So I thought Olivia would be a real fun person to hang out with.
yeah, she's
It's just
hilarious.
very cool. Well, listen, but it's so nice to talk to you. I'm very happy that you found time in your busy schedule, which I appreciate, to
Thank you
to
for
come
having
on
me.
and
This is great. I loved. Yeah, I mean, just the platform and the format of the show, and the way we get to just have a chat about. For me, I kind of know Olivia's like this too. She and I, we never get tired of talking about the business. Like we love it for all of its hoopla and all of its positives and a lot of negatives. There's a lot of crap that goes on in the industry, and but one thing, and I just had this conversation with a friend of mine who's a stylist, and we were talking about publicists and the industry and Hollywood, and one thing you can't say, no matter how much it rewards you or punishes you or hurts you or screws you over, it is not boring.
it is not boring at
There's
all.
never a dull freaking moment.
Yeah.
There may be trivial things that are overblown,
Yeah.
but once you start, there's so much like gossip and crap and dirt and muck and stuff behind the scenes, and like, especially living in a town like LA. Like I worked in West Hollywood. A lot of my clients at the gym are in the business, and so you just hear all kinds of shit.
Yeah.
Even though like I'm not up there. You know what I mean? Like But like even as like a no-name, like up and coming, like aspiring actor, you're privy to hearing this stuff, and it's like, whoa, didn't know so and so was like that.
Yeah, once we get done, I'll tell you some of the things that I heard that blew my mind that I had no idea even existed in the business. But okay. Anyway,
Yep.
Eddie, thank you so much for joining us, and thanks to everybody for tuning in into another episode of Let's Dive In. We just had fun with Eddie. Please go check out CW's Kung Fu. You will not regret it. Right below the screen. Bye, everybody.